The story begins with a young woman named She, who's a fashion designer living in London. She's just quit her job at a huge corporation to pursue her dream of promoting traditional Chinese clothing worldwide. While leaving the company, she bumps into a man named Yu who is being chased by his fans and journalists. In a rush, he accidentally knocks over her belongings, which makes her very angry. She tries to scold him, but she freezes when she notices how good-looking he is. Just then, his assistant shows up and offers to pay her money as an apology. However, since Yu refuses to apologize, she angrily throws the money back in his face before leaving. Afterward, her best friend asks her to get an autograph of the famous gamer, Wiz Lu. But when our girl reaches there, she realizes that the gamer is none other than Yu. He accuses her of following him, but she clarifies that she's just there to ask for an autograph for her friend, who is a huge fan. However, he refuses to oblige and asks her to leave. This makes Shi extremely angry, and she ends up kicking his chair, which makes him fall. In the next scene, Yu wins a major championship, after which he decides to leave London and go back to China. Although he's received offers to stay in London and work with big companies, he refuses them. This is because he has a dream of leading China's esports team someday. At the same time, she also returns to China and moves into her parents' apartment. One morning, she accidentally clogs her bathroom. She calls the plumbers, but they refuse to come because it's too early in the morning. Desperate, she decides to go to her neighbor's bathroom and rings on their door. However, she's shocked when she realizes that her neighbor is none other than Yu. He believes that she followed him from London and asks her to leave. However, since she desperately needs to use the restroom, she enters without his permission. After she comes out, another problem arises. She realizes that she left her keys inside her apartment. So, she calls her friend Muran and asks him to bring the spare keys he has. While waiting, she decides to stay at Yu's place, but he's reluctant. So, he suggests a deal that if she cleaned all the windows in his apartment within a week, he'll let her stay for an hour. Despite the challenging task, Yi accepts and begins to work, while he keeps a close eye on her. Sometime later, Muran finally arrives, and the two get back to her apartment. However, when he tries to fix the bathroom, he mistakenly breaks the toilet, causing the entire apartment to flood. Meanwhile, we see Yu at a meeting where he announces his resignation from his company, Jisha Esports. This raises concern among the board members as they have now lost their best player. While he proceeds to leave, he is stopped by a girl named Neon, who has a big crush on him. She knows he wants to start his own esports company, but she tries to stop him by mentioning the benefits this company can offer. When he still refuses, she offers to quit her job and work with him. However, he tells her that she doesn't need to give up anything for him and walks away. In another scene, she is with her friends discussing where to stay because her apartment is flooded. Muran suggests she stay at his place, but she refuses because he's a famous actor and his home is always surrounded by the media. Later, when she returns home, Yu approaches her and brings up their previous deal about cleaning his house. This annoys our girl, but she has no choice but to follow him to his apartment. Later, she comes up with a plan and asks him to let her live at his place in exchange for housekeeping. However, Yu refuses and asks her to leave after she finishes her work. Just then, the electricity goes out, which terrifies him. It turns out he has a fear of the dark, so he sits on the ground and starts panicking. She is shocked to see him in this state, but she comforts him and even sings him a song. This reminds him of a childhood friend who used to comfort him like this when he was scared. The next day, Yu notices that the house is incredibly clean and organized. Even after a thorough inspection, he can't find any dirt, which makes him happy. During their meal, he takes out a co-tenancy agreement, and she becomes very angry upon realizing that the terms are beneficial to him only. He says he doesn't like her attitude, but she reminds him that if she leaves, he will be alone during power outages. Knowing it's true, Yu apologizes to her and asks her to stay. That evening, Yu glances out his window and notices she laughing and hanging out with Muran. This makes him upset, so he goes to the sofa and sulks while he reads his book. Later, when she returns, she asks if he's hungry and decides to cook a meal for him. However, he rudely tells her that he's no longer hungry and goes to his room and starts working. Later, when he goes to refill his water, she says that he shouldn't drink cold water and offers to warm it up. However, he tells her that since she has a boyfriend, she shouldn't be so worried about other guys. This confuses our girl, but she soon realizes he's talking about Muran. She then clarifies that they're just friends and not in a relationship. Hearing this, Yu is relieved and proceeds to have dinner with her. The following morning, he goes for a run, where Neon approaches him and asks how his team formation is going. She claims to know influential people and offers to help him find a sponsor, but he turns her down and tells her to stay out of his business. That afternoon, he meets with his team's new members and announces his plan to win the worldwide competition. He names his team Eternal and says that he will train them in team battles to strengthen their cooperation. Afterward, Yu gets a call from someone who claims to have something he's been looking for a long time. The mysterious person gives him an address and asks him to be there by 6 p.m. Intrigued, our hero goes to the location, but when he arrives, the shutter doors start closing and trap him inside. The mysterious person seems to be aware of his fear of the dark, so he shuts out the lights. This makes you panic, and he struggles to breathe. Soon after, he receives a call from She, who asks him what he wants for dinner. However, he struggles with words, and she understands he is trapped in a dark place. Worried, she asks for the address, and despite his struggles, he somehow manages to tell her. Soon after, she arrives at the building and locates where he is trapped. She gets a tool and begins to open the door, which reminds Yu of the little girl who saved him as a child. She even sings a beautiful song to him to calm him down. Not long after, she successfully unlocks the door and rescues him. In the next scene, Yu wakes up in his bed and sees her there. He realizes she changed his clothes, which makes him feel violated. This annoys She because instead of being thankful for her help, he complains about everything. At that moment, Moran arrives at the house and becomes jealous upon seeing them together. When our hero senses this, he begins to brag about how much she takes care of him and mentions that she even changed his clothes. This angers Moran, prompting him to storm out. She asks Yu why he intentionally provoked her friend, and in response, he reveals that he dislikes Moran, and if she doesn't like it, she can leave. During their argument, she reveals that she's hurt because he didn't thank her for saving his life. This makes you feel a little bit guilty, so he thanks her and apologizes for his behavior. A little while later, she receives a call from her friend Rui, who reminds her about the traditional clothing exhibition they're supposed to attend. So she dresses up in a beautiful hanfu, and Yu is taken aback by how pretty she looked. After she leaves, he goes to check out her room, but she realizes she forgot her phone and comes back. She's surprised to see him in her room, and she quickly takes a phone, not realizing it's the wrong one. Later, Yu checks his phone and realizes that it's been swapped with She's. He also notices event tickets on her bedside and realizes she forgot them. At first he doesn't care, but soon changes his mind and decides to deliver them himself. Meanwhile at the event, she realizes she forgot her ticket, so only Rui gets to go inside. When Moran notices this, he sends a girl to give her a free ticket. The girl explains that she has a special chance to perform on stage with a special guest. She says there's also a reward for 5,000 won and a certificate, which also allows her to place a stall here. This makes her girl excited, and she immediately agrees to perform. However, when she goes to perform on stage, she discovers that a special guest is none other than Moran. She gives him shit for setting this up, but he insists he had no idea. They start dancing together, but soon she trips and they both fall to the ground. Just then, Yu arrives and helps her get up. He angrily tells her to go home, but she refuses because she wants to earn the reward to fix her apartment. This leads to a heated argument, which leads to She angrily walking away. That evening at home, she gets upset that she did not get her reward. When Yu tries to console her, she gets mad and asks him to leave her alone. However, he then surprises her by giving her a stall certificate he bought for her. This makes She very happy, and she excitedly hugs him. Yu tries to appear cool outside, but when he gets in his room, he starts to giggle as he remembers the hug. The next day, she opens her stall where she sells her handmade traditional clothing and accessories. For this, Yu's assistant Leon also arrives to help her out. However, our hero starts worrying that if she earns enough money, she might move out, leaving him alone again. After a successful day at the booth, they all return home, and she decides to make juice for everyone. Leon mentions that the cup she's using is expensive, and that Yu doesn't usually let people touch it. But surprisingly, he allows her to use the cup, leaving his assistant shook. Later, she brings out her hanfus and begins flaunting them to Leon. At that moment, Yu intentionally kicks the table, causing the crystal cup to fall and shatter on the ground. Our innocent girl believes that she's broken the cup and offers to compensate. This puts her in more debt, meaning she can't leave the house for the time being. In the evening, she goes live and vents about her annoying landlord. Meanwhile, Yu watches this from another room and laughs alone. The next day, she meets with Rui, who inquires about the guy from the exhibition. She explains that Yu is her landlord and a famous gamer who goes by the name Wiz Lu. Hearing this, Rui gets excited because she's a big fan of his work. She expresses her desire to meet him, and our girl says that she will think about it. Later, she requests Yu's permission to invite a friend, and he agrees. He then invites Leon to join them for dinner. That evening, the four of them gather at his place, and Rui is excited to meet him. During dinner, she keeps looking at Yu and even peels shrimp and adds vegetables for him. Our hero doesn't want to say no directly, so he explains that guests shouldn't do those things. She tells her not to worry about Yu, but Rui, who is completely smitten by him, ignores her. Meanwhile, Yu continues to boss around Chi and treat her like a maid, which annoys her. Elsewhere, Neon notices a group picture of Leon's social media and gets upset seeing the two girls with Yu. She tries calling him, but he doesn't answer. Frustrated, she contacts Leon to ask what they're doing. As they talk, she overhears she and Yu talking in the background, which makes her very angry. Afterward, the assistant talks privately with Yu and teases him about Shi. Our hero clarifies that she's just a housekeeper and there's nothing romantic between them. Leon then reminds him that she and Moran are childhood friends and that if he doesn't make a move, Moran might win her over. This upsets Yu, but he acts uninterested as if he doesn't care about her. After their friends leave, she decides to get revenge on him for his harsh treatment earlier. She hands him a glass of milk, claiming it's freshly squeezed coconut juice. Knowing he's lactose intolerant, she goes and sits in the bathroom. Soon, Yu begins to feel sick and pleads with her to open the bathroom door, but she laughs and says it's occupied. Moments later, Moran arrives at the house and Yu tells him to go away. However, the former refuses, saying that he wants to take Shi with him. This leads to an argument, and when our heroine overhears them, she quickly runs out of the bathroom to calm them down. Moran asks her to come with him, but she refuses and eventually convinces him to leave. Later, Yu confronts her for intentionally making him sick. She realizes that she's gone too far this time and apologizes for her actions. He then asks her not to leave him until he falls asleep, so she stays with him and sings him a song. The next day, Yu decides to go to the stall with she and her friends. They take a lot of pictures and have fun. After a while, Moran shows up and she tries to send him away because he's famous. However, when his hat falls off, people begin swarming around him in the stall. In the chaos, she gets injured, so our hero quickly takes her away. Noticing a wound on her leg, he carries her home and tends to her. Later, when she is home alone, Neon arrives hoping to see Yu. Realizing that he's not there, she tries to intimidate a girl and calls her a maid. She claims that she and Yu are a match made in heaven. However, she stands her ground and mentions that he takes care of her all the time and even treated her wound a few minutes earlier. Neon becomes furious upon hearing this, prompting her to walk away. A little while later, she begins feeling strange about what she said earlier. When Yu comes back, she acts distant and cold towards him. After eating, she leaves without picking up her dishes or cleaning the table. This surprises him, but he doesn't say anything and simply washes the dishes. Meanwhile, Rui talks to Shi and asks if she's noticed that Yu is treating her differently. Our girl thinks he's rude to her most of the time, but her friends insist that he's tender and sweet towards her. Although she denies it, she feels happy inside and starts blushing. After this, she goes to a park to do live streaming where she shows off her creations. A little while later, Mulan arrives and throws up as he seems to be very drunk. He notices our heroine and immediately hugs her from behind. Seeing this, many people rush up to them, and in this chaotic situation, Shi's phone falls and is smashed. She tries to retrieve it, but she is also crushed by the crowd. Fortunately, Yu arrives and takes her away while covering her with his coat. Along the way, he holds her in his arms, and it seems like he's about to confess his feelings. However, the darkness of the night makes him feel nervous. Although he insists he only helped her to avoid owing her any favors, he unconsciously doesn't let go of her hand. The next day, they both wake up happy and start being sweeter to each other. Yu even helps her clean the windows, and they have a good time together. A little while later, she realizes that her computer is broken, leaving her no way to engage with her followers. So, she heads to Yu's room to use his device. However, Yu is in the shower, and unbeknownst to her, his camera is still on live broadcast. When she tries to use his computer, everyone watching the stream sees her and gets shocked. Reading the comments, Leon gets concerned about his boss's reputation and quickly calls him. Yu immediately comes out of the shower and ends the live stream. He asks why she is in his room, and she explains that she doesn't have her phone and that her laptop isn't working. In response, he shows her his phone collection and asks her to choose one among them. When she questions why he has so many, he explains that they're gifts from sponsors. Although perplexed, she excitedly picks up a phone and thanks him for his generosity. Yu then proceeds to fix her computer, and when she gets close to him, he feels nervous and suggests she pick other gifts from his collection. Once she leaves, he repairs her computer and reads negative comments about her. People are unnecessarily hating on her because they believe she is using Moran to promote her business. In the meantime, she returns and is excited to check out her 40,000 fans. However, he quickly pushes her away and creates a new page with only 8 fans. He tells her that the computer still needs more fixing, so he will keep it up for now. Disappointed, she heads to take a shower. The next day, as she's at the store to get some fabrics, she meets the owner, Mr. Deng. He mentions that he noticed her stall and was impressed. He suggests that if she's interested, she can take his business card and apply to their Hanfu design department for a job. They mostly specialize in traditional designs, which would be perfect for her. Excited by this opportunity, she immediately agrees to the offer. Meanwhile, Neon comes to Yu and invites his team to dinner, but he declines. Just then, the new leader of the Jaisa team, Hai, speaks up and says that she's inviting him because she respects him. He tells Yu not to be arrogant amongst his team members, which causes the Eternal team to get angry and tell him to leave immediately. Later that evening, she wants to use Yu's computer to check some information, but he doesn't want to give it to her. It turns out that some of the hatred towards her has become so intense, he wants to protect her. He simply says to let her know what she needs, and he will print it for her. Hearing this, she is confused, but she agrees. The next day, the two go to the supermarket for some grocery shopping. Afterwards, Li Yan calls Yu and advises him not to let her go out because of the recent criticism. Our hero obliges and decides to take her home, but they are suddenly stopped by Moran. She scolds him for wrecking her stall and causing trouble in their last meeting. Moran realizes that she's unaware of what's happening on the internet and says he just wants to talk. After this, the two head to Yu's house, where the two men continue to angrily stare at each other. Moran mentions that he will take Shi with him to protect her from a crisis. However, Yu refuses, claiming that each problem she has faced is all because of him. Meanwhile, she is chopping vegetables, wondering what the two men are talking about. At that moment, she accidentally cuts her fingers, making her scream. When the boys arrive, they begin to argue about who gets to bandage her. This makes Shi laugh, and she says that she feels like a scene from a TV series where she's the main heroine. However, the guys say she's out of her mind and leave her to handle her wound herself. Later that evening, Yu is unsure whether he should hide the truth from Shi. So, he asks her what she would do if she became popular one day with millions of fans and if some people criticized her. She replies that she would be happy even if someone criticized her. It doesn't bother her because there will always be diverse opinions. She then proceeds to draw a star on the window, and Yu is surprised to see it. He recalls a girl from his childhood who used to draw the same stars for him. The next day at work, Mr. Ding is impressed with Shi's design, so he invites her to participate in the next season's fashion collection. This makes her happy, but while she's leaving work, she is suddenly surrounded by a group of reporters. They want to know her relationship with Yu and Moran and why she is seen with both of them. She is left speechless, and that's when Moran arrives and hugs her. Instead of clarifying, he announces that she is his girlfriend, shocking everyone. When the reporters ask why she's living at a gamer's house, he says that Yu is her brother. Just then, our hero arrives at the scene and hears everything. Reporters then begin to question him about Shi being his sister. With no other option, he admits to it and declares that he won't tolerate anyone bullying her. After this, Moran takes her away from the reporters. He brings her to his home, where he shows her the room he's prepared her. There she begins to cry and wonders why Yu called her his sister in front of everyone. However, Moran tells her that Yu is not a good person and advises her not to go back to his house anymore. Later, Rui arrives to see Shi and apologizes for not telling her about the negative news on the internet. She then advises her not to take Yu's words to heart, as he called her sister just to protect her. However, at that moment, Moran returns and forcibly kicks Rui out of his house. Meanwhile, Yu sits on his sofa all night waiting for Shi and falls asleep there. The next morning, he wakes up to the doorbell ringing and thinks it's her. However, to his dismay, it turns out to be Leon and Rui. The two try to convince him to pursue Shi and win her over, but he refuses. He says he can't force her to stay, but Rui says that she left because he called her sister in public. Elsewhere, Shi is also depressed, and Moran tries to cheer her up. She then mentions that she needs to return to Yu's home to pick up her belongings. Despite his hesitation, he agrees to drive her there. Later, when she arrives at Yu's house, she wishes deep down that he might ask her to stay. However, our hero is consumed by his pride and tells her that she can do whatever she wants. This response makes her feel like he's not interested, which leaves her heartbroken once again. In the evening, Moran organizes a surprise to welcome Shi to his house. When the lights go out, she instantly thinks about you and gets worried. Meanwhile, he receives a phone call from someone who informs him that the person he is seeking is a girl named Shi. Hearing this, he immediately grabs a taxicab and hurries to Moran's house. However, when he gets there, he notices the two dancing together, which upsets him. He then calls her, but when she doesn't answer, he leaves disappointed. Afterward, she discovers that you called her several times, which makes her happy. But when she calls him back, she finds out that he has turned off his phone. Due to this, she becomes upset and ends up drinking a lot. While drunk, she keeps talking about you and insists on going to his home. After a lot of insistence, Moran has no choice but to take her back. A while later, Yu is on the balcony when he notices Shi below. Excited, he immediately rushes to her and hugs her tightly. Meanwhile, Moran notices them from afar and walks away as the two of them head inside. The following morning, she goes to check on Yu and notices he has a fever. So, she decides to stay and take care of him. Afterwards, she asks him what happened last night and how she got back. He then informs her that she knocked on his door, and when he opened it, she forcefully kissed him. Hearing this, she is embarrassed and she can't believe that she did that, but he insists it's true. He then asks about her childhood, and she reveals that she grew up abroad, but lived in China for a while. However, before you can ask more, she gets a call from Rui and goes outside. Afterward, she gives some of her Hanfu designs to Leon to try on. He looks very handsome in them, and she compliments him a lot. Hearing this, Yu becomes jealous and decides to wear some Hanfu himself. She compliments him as well, but he's disappointed because she doesn't praise him as much as she did his assistant. Later that evening, she is designing accessories for Hanfu, but Yu's handsome face keeps coming to her mind, making it hard for her to focus. At that moment, she decides to name her designs Eternal Star. The next day at work, she hears some colleagues gossiping about her. They say that since she's Moran's girlfriend, she shouldn't have to do a job like this. Despite the comments, she doesn't take them to heart and greets her coworkers politely. Later, she's approached by her manager, who appears to be very angry. She suggests that she should resign from her position because rumors can negatively affect the company. Hearing this, our girl is devastated, but she agrees to quit her job. In the next scene, Mr. Ding approaches Shi and says that he heard about her resignation. He encourages her by saying that she's a very talented person and she should use her unique design approach to start her own brand. He suggests she meet a famous designer named Miss Jiang and learn traditional embroidery from her. She feels inspired by his words and thanks him. The next morning, Yu wakes up and sees her tending to the plants. She explains that she's trying to grow plants so that she can enjoy fresh vegetables. She then invites him to touch the soil, but he refuses, saying it's dirty. Instead, he holds her hand, which creates an awkward moment between them. Just then, soil gets in his palm and she quickly helps him clean it up, which brings them closer. However, Yu excuses himself and returns to his room. He feels his heart is pounding and thinks he should call a doctor. Later, he meets with Leon and mentions that one of his friends frequently feels his heart racing around a particular girl. He claims that he lacks experience in relationships, so he's seeking Leon's advice. The assistant theorizes that the guy might be in love, but Yu refuses to believe it. Meanwhile, she asks Rui the same question, claiming that it's for her friend. The latter understands that she's talking about herself and realizes that she's in love. The next day, the Eternal team wins a competition against the Jaisha team. This makes Neon realize that no one can defeat you, but Hai gets mad and accuses her of siding with him. She claims that she was simply stating facts, but he gets aggressive and tells her that she is free to leave whenever she wants. In response, Neon slaps him hard and tells him that Jaisha will be destroyed sooner or later. Meanwhile, she and Rui arrive in an ancient city to meet a famous designer, Mrs. Jiang. However, despite a lot of pleading, her assistant refuses to let them in. Later, Rui meets with Leon and they discuss what Yu and Shi told them. They eventually figure out that the two must be in love, but are terrified to confess their feelings. To help their respective friends, they decide to pretend to be in a relationship. Rui then informs them that they went to meet Miss Jiang, but they were refused entry. Hearing this, he tells her that Miss Jiang is a good friend of Yu, so he can help them. Later, Leon discusses the situation with Yu and suggests they all go to the ancient city this week. Our hero responds coldly and says he's not interested. But when Leon mentions he's dating Rui, he is shocked and eventually agrees. In the next scene, the group heads to the ancient city together. During the trip, Leon and Rui pretend to be a couple and they make a lot of effort to bring their friends closer. That night, they stay at a hotel and the four start drinking and playing games. The games require everyone to reveal their secrets, and she says that she loves stars. Hearing this, Yu recalls his childhood friend and becomes increasingly convinced that the small girl who helped him in the orphanage is she. Soon, he becomes drunk and asks her to take him home. However, she takes him to his hotel room where he starts taking off his clothes to take a bath. She gets scared he might catch a cold, so she follows him and tries to stop him. Suddenly, Yu presses her against the wall and kisses her, and after this, the two share a bed and quickly fall asleep. The next day, their friends refuse to go out, so only Yu and she go to see Miss Jiang. When the assistant sees the popular gamer, he greets him politely and apologizes to Shi for what happened the last time. After that, they meet Miss Jiang in her room. The famous designer showcases her embroidery pieces and shares some tips about traditional clothing. She also assures Shi that she can come and visit her anytime in the future. Later, when our couple arrives home, they both feel nervous about what happened last night. She thinks Yu doesn't remember, but he actually remembers everything and is embarrassed. However, before they can talk about it, they hear a knock on the door and it turns out to be Moran. He tells Shi that he moved across the hall and invites her to stay with him. However, she refuses to stay with him and claims that she's more comfortable at Yu's apartment. She also asks him to clarify their relationship in public and says she just wants to be good friends. Hearing this, Moran is disappointed and he reluctantly agrees to let her go. The next day, Mr. Ding invites Shi to attend a traditional design exhibition, so she shows up with Rui. Unfortunately, one of the employees accidentally damaged the clothes that were supposed to be displayed. Mr. Ding looks at Shi's dress and realizes that it fits their theme. So, he asks to borrow her dress, which she happily agrees to. Later, the clients are very impressed with the designs, and Mr. Ding thanks Shi for her help. He then realizes that she's wearing very thin clothes, so he takes off his jacket and gives it to her. Later, when she goes home, Yu notices that she's wearing a man's jacket and becomes jealous. He assumes it belongs to Moran and throws it to the ground. However, realizing her talent and passion for Hanfu, Yu suggests that she start her own business. Later, she thinks about what he said and agrees to start her own business. However, she realizes that she needs an office space first, so she comes up with a plan. She approaches Yu and tells him that he has regular stomach problems, so she feels she hasn't taken good care of him. She then offers to come to his workplace and cook for him. Yu doesn't understand what she's trying to do, so he says he doesn't eat at noon. However, when she becomes upset, he agrees to let her cook in his office. He also offers her an area in the office space where she can work, saving her from running around. Hearing this, she thinks she's achieved her goal and rejoices. The following day, he brings her to his workplace and introduces her to the team. They warmly welcome her and call her sister-in-law, causing her to blush. Yu has set up an office for her across from him just so he can see her all the time. Not only that, he has also thoughtfully prepared everything she might need. This gesture moves Shi, so she takes the initiative to thank him. On her first day, she receives an order for 3 pieces. This makes her extremely happy, and as she's celebrating with her friend, Moran shows up. He tells her that he can find a better space with all the required equipment. Hearing this, Yu confronts him, and the two men begin to argue. Before things can escalate, she asks Moran not to create a scene and asks him to leave. Sometime later, our hero gets a call informing him that his childhood friend, whom he's been searching for, is currently not in China. This disappoints him because it means that she is not the girl he's looking for. Seeing him upset, Leon approaches him and asks what's wrong. Yu then explains that she is not the little star he was looking for. In response, his assistant advises him to value the person right in front of him. He reminds Yu that he's already lost his little star, and now he shouldn't lose she as well. Later, she brings some dumplings for Yu. He then asks her what she would do if she lost something and believes she found it, only to realize that it wasn't the original one. She replies that she would see if what she had now is worth it. Hearing this, Yu is touched, and he goes to the kitchen and carves little stars out of carrots. The following day, she visits Miss Jiang, who teaches her some traditional embroidery. While they're working, the famous designer reveals that Yu loves her and has spent the last 15 years looking for her. She's confused, so Miss Jiang tells her about the girl he spent his childhood with. This breaks our heroine's heart, since she believes that Yu only showed her affection because he confused her for another girl and not because he genuinely liked her. Later, she is crying alone when Yu arrives to take her home. He asks her what's wrong, and she confronts him about his childhood friend. She says that if she had known he liked someone else, she would never have gotten so close to him. Yu tries to convince her that she's important to him and that he likes her for who she is. However, she doesn't believe him and refuses to talk to him. After they arrive home, she gets a call from her mother who says she's outside her apartment. This freaks Shi out as she hasn't disclosed about her relationship. She immediately asks Yu to dress up as a woman to fool her mom. However, he refuses and instead opens the door. Upon seeing a man at the door, Mom is surprised and she tries to explain that he's her landlord. But she suspects they might be a couple and says she will support their relationship. Hearing this, Yu starts blushing, but she denies any romantic relationship with him. She keeps bringing up his little star and claims he only loves and cares about her. Later, she speaks privately with her mother, who says that she noticed how much Yu cares about her and how he never takes his eyes off of her. She then advises her not to be obsessed with the past and to appreciate what she has in front of her. That night, she gives a room to her mother and sleeps on the couch. However, around midnight, the power suddenly goes out and Yu comes to look for her. With compassion, she goes to his room and stays with him. While she comforts him, he talks about his childhood trauma and how he is often bullied by other kids because he was scared of the dark. Hearing this, she feels bad for him and assures him that she is there to protect him now. The following morning, we see her mom and Yu cooking together as she teaches him some culinary skills, and he learns diligently. When she asks about his family, he reveals that he doesn't have one and that he grew up in an orphanage. Hearing this, she feels bad and suggests he call her mother from now on. She also realizes that he has feelings for Shi, so she suggests they communicate openly and make their relationship work. Yu is pleased to hear this, and he thanks her for being so kind. Just then, Shi arrives and is surprised to see the two of them bonding. Later, while they're making dumplings, Moran unexpectedly arrives at the house. He approaches Shi and begins to act close to her. Mom notices Yu's jealousy and asks him to give Shi orange juice, which is her favorite. Our hero does so, but she refuses the juice, which upsets him. Mom then explains that she rejected the juice because Moran was already feeding her oranges. She tells him that he should always take the opportunity to strike first, so no one can take her away from him. Inspired by her words, Yu decides to take Shi out for a movie. While there, she worries that he might be scared of the dark, but he tells her that he doesn't feel scared when he's with her. He then talks about his relationship with his little star, explaining that in his childhood, she was the most important person to him. However, now she is the most important person in his life, and he doesn't want to lose her. He asks for her forgiveness and pleads with her not to leave him. She is touched by his words, so she finally forgives him. In the next scene, her mom gets ready to leave, but before that, she arranges for workers to fix and renovate Shi's apartment. Before departing, she encourages Yu to keep waiting over her daughter and take good care of her. Since he isn't experienced in relationships, he turns to his assistant for advice on how to make Shi fall in love with him. Leon suggests that girls generally like a guy who is rich, handsome, and sweet. Since Yu is already rich and good-looking, he advises him to be sweeter and more affectionate towards Shi. In the following scene, she is busy making designs when Yu approaches her and invites her to dinner. She's surprised that he can cook, but says she can't come because she's working. Yu then recalls what Leon said, so he tries to be sweet by making baby voices and asks her to come with him. Seeing this, she is taken aback and even checks if he has a fever. After that, they sit down for a meal, and Yu remembers Leon's suggestion that girls like gifts. So he hands his bank card to Shi and tells her to spend however she wants. This shocks our heroine, but she is also happy and gladly accepts the card. The following day, Moran shows up to meet Shi and asks her to attend a press conference he's holding tomorrow. She tries to refuse, saying she's too busy, but he continues to insist. He claims he'll make an important announcement tomorrow, so she reluctantly agrees to go. Later, she meets with Leon and Yu, who reveal that they will attend the esports championship conference tomorrow. They invite her to join, but she declines, as she has already promised to attend Moran's conference. Leon tries to convince her, but Yu stops him, saying he shouldn't force her to come if she doesn't want to. The next day, it's time for the press conference, and Moran announces that he will talk about his girlfriend. However, she doesn't want to be there, and all she can think about is Yu. She decides to leave, but Moran's manager stops her and informs her how much he has silently done for her behind her back by anonymously sending her gifts and fabrics. Hearing this, she feels bad and has no choice but to stay. Later, Rui approaches her and scolds her for not supporting Yu, whom she truly loves. She reminds her of his devotion to her and advises her to go after him. Hearing this, she finally leaves without saying goodbye to Moran. Meanwhile, at Yu's conference, he is visibly disturbed thinking about Shi, but moments later she arrives and stays by his side, which makes him very happy. After this, the reporters bombard them with questions and she clarifies that she is neither Moran's girlfriend nor Yu's sister. She explains that Moran had only said that earlier to protect her from bully. Hearing this, everyone is shocked and the reporters ask her about her relationship with Yu and why she lives at his house. This makes her a bit nervous, but our hero wraps his arms around her and tells everyone that she belongs to him. He then says that if they want to know about her, they can ask him directly. She is slightly stunned, but she nods her head and smiles. After the official announcement of the relationship, Moran's press conference descends into chaos. He is shocked and angry since he planned to propose to Shi publicly. That evening, an upset Moran is wandering around the streets when Shi approaches him. She notices that he's drunk and apologizes for leaving his press conference so suddenly. He realizes that she's only wearing pajamas, so he takes off his coat and wraps it around her. She then apologizes for not reciprocating his feelings and says that she loves Yu. Despite being heartbroken, Moran finally accepts her decision and assures her that he won't be trouble anymore. The following day, Shi receives a huge order and she and Rui decide to meet with the client for a discussion. To their surprise, he turns out to be her former boss, Mr. Ding. She is happy to see him again, and she shows him a sample of the dresses she made. He immediately notices that this is influenced by Miss Jiang's embroidery and is impressed. Our girl claims that she's been learning from Miss Jiang, who has given her permission to use her embroidery. After this, Mr. Ding invites her to take part in his upcoming traditional designs exhibition. She is happy about this opportunity and assures him that she will not let him down. Later, she tells her friend that even though she and Yu are now officially together, they haven't made any progress. In response, Rui urges her to dress seductively tonight and approach him. However, that evening, she surprises him by wearing a funny costume and putting on a mustache. Despite trying to be seductive, he finds her appearance funny and starts laughing. He then tries to kiss her, but she gets embarrassed and leaves. The following day, she visits the orphanage where she spent her childhood. She meets with the orphanage director and tries to strike up a conversation, but the latter doesn't recognize her. She then reveals that she left this place as a child after being adopted by her parents. She went abroad and changed her name after that. Hearing this, the director recalls a little girl who used to like Han Fu very much. She confirms this and says that she is the same girl. After this, the director asks her if she remembers the boy she used to play with. She says that she left and the boy was devastated and went through a tough time. However, the director is glad that she has returned because the boy is still searching for her and now they can finally meet. Meanwhile, Yu is at his home when he gets a call from the orphanage director. She informs him that she has found his little star, whom he has been searching for the last 15 years. However, he replies that he now has a girlfriend, so we won't be able to meet the girl. The director then tells him that the girl has changed her name to Lin Shi and has recently returned from abroad. Yu is shocked to learn that his little star is none other than his own girlfriend. Later, she looks at the swing in the orphanage and remembers the boy she used to play with and feels guilty for not contacting him after all these years. She remembers that she gave him a necklace so that they could recognize each other in the future. After this, she takes out a star necklace and gets emotional. Moments later, Yu shows up and she is surprised to see him there. He then takes out the same star necklace she gave him as a child. Seeing this, our girl realizes that it's her childhood friend. The two become emotional and hug each other. Yu then asks if she still likes him after 15 years, and she says yes. From this point onwards, their relationship grows stronger. At home, he clings to her all the time and even kisses her while cooking. Meanwhile, Leon seems distant from Rui, so she gets worried and talks to Shi. In response, the latter reveals that his grandmother is in a nursing home, which is why he's so upset. Later, Rui finds out the location of the nursing home where his grandmother is staying and visits her. She spends some time with the old woman and takes care of her. She also buys her some food and covers her medical fees. Later, Leon goes to the hospital and notices many gifts in his grandma's room. When he tries to pay the bills, the nurse tells him that Rui has already paid for the whole year. Hearing this, Leon hurriedly excuses himself and goes to see her. She's happy to see him and thinks he's there to thank her. However, he becomes enraged and accuses her of being self-righteous. Rui says that she was only trying to help him, but he claims she's trying to show off her wealth and make him feel inferior. This causes a heated argument between them, and Leon gives her his bank card, saying he'll pay her in installments. However, She throws a card in his face and storms away in anger. She then goes to Xi's place and vents her frustration while crying. Our heroine explains that Leon has been trying to handle this situation on his own and even turned down Yu's help. She advises Rui not to blame him too much, as his pride might have been hurt when she paid his grandma's bills. Meanwhile, Yu wants to spend time with Xi, so he gets annoyed by her friend's presence. He calls his assistant to pick her up, but he also refuses. The next morning, Rui leaves, and Yu finally has some time alone with Xi. He flirts with her a little and tries to kiss her, but suddenly, the doorbell rings. Yu assumes it's Rui and refuses to open it, but when it rings again, they both go to open the door together. To their surprise, it turns out to be Xi's parents. Seeing them so close, Dad becomes enraged and scolds Yu for touching his daughter. After they enter, Yu tries to introduce himself politely, but Dad once again behaves very harshly and even hits him with a sofa cushion. Seeing this, she gets scared and takes Yu away and apologizes for her father's behavior. She then asks him to go outside while she talks to her parents. After our hero departs, her dad finally behaves peacefully. It turns out he's only acting tough to test the popular gamer. Meanwhile, Yu goes to his office and approaches his assistant. He explains the situation to him, and Leon advises him to meet with Moran since he knows Xi's family very well. Next, we see Moran, who is having a tough go. Ever since the press conference, his reputation has taken a hit, making it hard for him to get acting roles. Moments later, he is approached by Yu, who requests his help in impressing Xi's father. Naturally, Moran is irritated to see him and tries to send him away. But just then, his manager calls him to end their contract. This can be fatal for his career, so he comes up with an idea to save it. Knowing that his manager is interested in esports, he asks Yu to convince him to give him his job back. Following this, the two head to see the manager, and Moran tries to negotiate his contract. However, the latter refuses to work with him because he's caused a lot of trouble in the past. Instead, he tries to discuss investment opportunities with Yu. Our hero agrees to work together, but in return, he wants Moran to get a nice role. Because of this, the manager finally decides to cast him in a second male lead role in an upcoming drama. After receiving a new drama, Moran is ecstatic and reveals Xi's father's personality and interests. Feeling confident, Yu then returns home and meets with her parents. Dad continues to test him and even hands him a bank card in exchange for leaving Xi. Following Moran's advice, Yu accepts the card and assures him that he will use it to take care of his daughter. After this, Dad challenges him to a pomegranate peeling competition, which Yu wins. In the end, the grumpy old man is finally impressed. Later, Yu takes out his star necklace and reveals to Xi's parents that she is the little star that he has been searching for over the past 5 years. She also takes out her necklace and explains that he is her childhood friend. Yu then informs them that before she became their daughter, she was his little star. He says that they have been apart for 15 years, so this time they don't want to lose each other. In the following scene, Rui arrives to take care of Leon's grandmother, but he harshly orders her to leave, claiming that this is a family matter and he doesn't need her help. He tells her that their lifestyles are so different that he is unworthy of a girl like her. Hearing this, Rui starts crying and walks away angrily. The following day, the Eternal team competes in the semifinal rounds and ends up winning. To celebrate their victory, Yu throws a party for his team members. During this, Rui appears gloomy and she drinks a lot of wine. When Leon notices her, he becomes angry and starts drinking as well. Afterward, Yu intentionally sends the drunk duo to the same room. Not surprisingly, they forget their differences and start kissing each other. The next morning, when Yu and Xi wake up, they are surprised to see that Rui and Leon have reconciled. Meanwhile, the esports championship is approaching, where the Eternal team will compete against the Jaisha team. Hai, the leader of the Jaisha team, has gone crazy and he makes his team members train until 3 in the morning. This annoys Neon and she asks her friends to go to sleep. However, Hai argues with her, saying it's not her place to speak. On the day of the finals, the Eternal team members appear in Hanfus designed by Xi, which captures everyone's attention. After an intense competition, they successfully defeat the Jaisha team and secure the ultimate victory. With this, they qualify to represent China in the International Esports Championship. Yu's fans root for him, and the atmosphere is filled with applause and cheers. After the game, Jaisha's inventor is very unhappy with Hai and kicks him out of the company. Moments later, only Neon is there to see him off, and she tells him not to be discouraged. She says that she admires him as their leader and hopes to meet him in the National Esports Championship. Hearing this, He also apologizes for his past behavior, and they reconcile. After the Eternal Team's victory, the costumes designed by She gain immense popularity and sales skyrocket. With Mr. Ding's endorsement, she quickly rises to prominence in the industry. One day, during a press conference, she delivers a heartfelt speech about her love for Hanfu. She then thanks Mr. Ding for the platform and the opportunity he gave her. After this, she looks affectionately at Yu and thanks him, saying that he is the eternal star in her life. The next morning, he wakes up early to cook breakfast for her. She is happy to see this and goes to the balcony to stretch. Surprisingly, she notices Rui and Leon at their old apartment and asks why they're there. They explain that She's mother fixed the place and rented it to them. After a while, they arrive to join She for breakfast. However, Muan also comes along with them, which surprises our heroine. He shares that he regained his reputation as an artist and is now enrolled in acting school. He also apologizes to She for bothering her all these years. She realizes that he's matured a lot, and they reconcile their friendship. In the final scene, we see She and Yu taking a walk together while holding hands. As they watch the sunset, he mentions that they grew up together, and now they'll grow old together. The show ends as he says that they're each other's eternal stars, and affectionately kisses her on the forehead.